I paid bills at home, but mom moved her friend and kids into my room. So I left, and now she's begging me back. I am living at home at 23 isn't exactly what I had planned for my life, but it worked out for the most part. I wasn't freeloading or anything. I paid rent, covered the electricity bill, and even paid for my mom's phone plan. It's not like I was just lying around eating snacks and playing video games. Honestly, the deal was pretty good. I had my own space, got home cooked meals, and could focus on my freelance work without worrying too much about big expenses. I had even turned my room into a mini studio for my content creation gigs, which I was hoping would take off soon. Everything was fine until my mom's best friend, Kelly, moved in with her 2 kids. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I understood the situation. Kelly was going through a nasty divorce, and her husband, according to my mom, was a complete jerk. They needed somewhere to stay, and our house was their best option. I thought it would be temporary. Just a few weeks until Kelly got back on her feet. At first, they stayed in the guest room, and it wasn't a big deal. Sure, the kids were a little loud, but I just closed my door and put on my headphones. It wasn't ideal, but I could manage. The guest room wasn't huge, but it was enough for Kelly and her kids to crash in for a while. I figured that was the arrangement, and I didn't give it much thought. That changed fast. One day, I came home after running some errands and noticed something weird right away. My door was open, and I could hear kids laughing inside. When I walked in, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My bed was covered in toys, my desk chair was moved, and one of the kids was on my computer. My studio setup, my expensive microphone, lighting, and camera was shoved to the corner of the room like it didn't matter. Kelly's kids were running around like they owned the place, and all my stuff was just out of place. I yelled, "What the hell is going on?" Probably louder than I should have, but I was in shock. My mom walked in and immediately started scolding me, like I was the one out of line. She said, "Calm your tits. It's not a big deal. The kids needed more space, and your room is the biggest. It's only fair." Fair? My room? The one I was paying rent for? I told her I wanted them out of my room immediately, but she brushed me off like I was being ridiculous. "They need to be comfortable," she said. "You're being selfish." Selfish? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't about comfort. It was about respect. My room wasn't just a place I slept in. It was where I worked. My studio setup had cost me over $3,000, and it wasn't something I could just throw into a corner and ignore. I explained all of this, but my mom wasn't having it. "They're just kids," she said, "and they want to play on your computer. Stop making such a fuss." I shut that idea down immediately. "No way are they touching my equipment," I said. "If anything happens to it, I'm screwed." That's when Kelly chimed in. She said, "Oh, come on. They're just curious, and you can't blame them. Maybe if you weren't so uptight, they'd listen to you." I was stunned. Uptight? I wasn't uptight. I was trying to protect my stuff I worked hard for. I told her flat out that the kids weren't allowed to touch my things, and if they did, I'd hold her responsible. That didn't go over well. She called me selfish too, and my mom agreed with her. It was like I was suddenly the bad guy in my own home. After that first blow up, things in the house got tense. I couldn't believe my mom and Kelly were siding against me, especially when I was the one paying rent. But I figured they'd realize how ridiculous this was after they calmed down. The next day, I tried talking to my mom again. I explained how much my studio equipment meant to me, not just financially, but professionally. Freelancing isn't just some hobby. It's my job. Without my gear, I couldn't do my work, and replacing it would take me months, maybe even years to save up for. I told her, "Mom, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but this isn't fair. I'm paying rent for that room, and you just gave it away without even asking me." Her response, "You're being dramatic. It's my house, and I decide what happens in it." I was stunned. "Your house? I pay rent. I'm contributing here, not just squatting for free." She shrugged like it didn't matter. "The kids need space. Your brother's room is too small, and your sister's room is full of her things. Besides, your room has all that fancy stuff, and they like it better." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My siblings, both 15, had rooms that were perfectly fine. Sure, my brother's room was smaller, but it was big enough for 2 kids. My sister's room was almost as big as mine. And honestly, she barely used it since she was always out with her friends. But my mom wouldn't even consider it. "The kids love your room because it's cooler," she said. "All your fancy gadgets make it more fun for them." Fun? This wasn't about fun. My room wasn't some playhouse for Kelly's kids to mess around in. It was where I worked, where I relaxed, where I lived. I told her, "If they break anything, are you going to replace it? Because I can't afford to." That's when Kelly chimed in again. "Oh, stop being so paranoid."
Now you can watch the second part by pressing share and more.
"They're kids, not monsters. If you just let them play, they'd probably leave your stuff alone." I snapped. "Let them play? On my $3,000 setup? Are you serious?" "No way." Kelly rolled her eyes and said, "You're being selfish. This is a hard time for us, and you're making it all about you." At that point, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned to my mom and said, "If they're staying in my room, I need to move my stuff out. I can't risk them damaging it." She laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Where are you going to put it? There's no space anywhere else. So I'm just supposed to let them trash my stuff?" I asked, my voice rising. "How is that fair?" My mom just shook her head. "Life isn't fair. You're an adult. You should be able to handle a little inconvenience." A little inconvenience? Being kicked out of my own room wasn't a little inconvenience. It was disrespectful. I was paying rent for that space, and now I couldn't even use it. And on top of that, I wasn't allowed to go into my room anymore. My mom said it was their space now and that I had no right to barge in. For the next few days, I tried to stay out of the house as much as possible. I'd hang out at coffee shops trying to get work done on my laptop, but it wasn't the same. Without my studio setup, my productivity tanked. I was falling behind on deadlines and my stress levels were through the roof. I tried one last time to reason with my mom. Look, I said. I'll make a deal. Let me move my setup into the guest room, and they can stay in my room. That way, I can still work, and they can have the space they need. She didn't even think about it. The guest room is too cramped for all your stuff. You'll just have to wait until Kelly gets back on her feet. How long is that going to take? I asked, frustrated. She shrugged. As long as it takes. You don't get to set deadlines for other people's struggles. I couldn't believe this was happening. It wasn't like I hated Kelly or her kids. I understood they were going through a rough time, and I was willing to help. But this wasn't helping, it was enabling. Kelly wasn't paying anything to stay with us, and now I was basically being pushed out of my own life to accommodate them. Later that night, I overheard Kelly talking to my mom in the kitchen. She was complaining about me, calling me selfish and immature. She said, he doesn't even understand how hard this is for us. He's just being a brat. My mom agreed, saying, he's always been stubborn. He'll get over it. That was the final straw. I realized they didn't care about me or my situation. I was just a paycheck to my mom and a roadblock to Kelly and her kids. They weren't going to listen, and they weren't going to change. The next day, I started looking for rooms to rent. It wasn't an easy decision. I loved living at home despite the occasional drama. It was affordable, and I got along with my siblings. But I couldn't stay in a place where I wasn't respected. After days of feeling like a stranger in my own home, I decided enough was enough. It wasn't just about the room anymore. It was about respect. I was paying rent, contributing to bills, and trying to build a future for myself, but none of that seemed to matter to my mom or Kelly. They had decided my needs came last, and I was tired of it. One night, I sat my mom down in the living room. My siblings were upstairs, and Kelly was putting her kids to bed. So it was just the two of us. I figured if I could make her see how serious I was, she'd finally listen. Mom, I started, keeping my voice calm. We need to talk. She gave me a tired look. What now? I can't keep living like this, I said. I've been paying rent for that room, and now I can't even use it. You gave it away without asking me, and it's not fair. She sighed and leaned back on the couch. We've been over this. It's temporary.
Now you can watch the third part by pressing share and more.